Now, the Eastern Cape will receive about R500 million of national government's 1.2 billion rand disaster relief package, and that's aimed at helping rebuild infrastructure that's damaged by last month's severe floods. The province, as you now know, amongst the hardest hit, with roads, homes and public services all gutted across several districts. This money will be disbursed, as you heard from Griselda, in phases starting from this week, with provincial allocations followed by municipal transfers. Government has promised strict oversight to prevent any mismanagement. Let's get reaction now from the Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance MEC, Zolile Williams, who joins us now via our video link. MEC, thanks very much indeed for your time. You heard the minister there once again, in case you missed it yesterday, drawing a very firm line in the sand about how this money will be released. As a province, are you worried that you'll be affected by this new measure that's been put in place, namely that there's no money that will be sent out unless the previous money that was received has been fully accounted for?
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to the viewers at home. Well, you know, when working with municipalities, you can't guarantee that all processes will be followed as you would really want them to be followed. However, in the Eastern Cape, we have developed an infrastructure implementation strategy called the risk-adjusted strategy, which actually monitors the whole construction value chain from procurement or project initiation to procurement. And at various intervals, we sit down, I directly sit down with all the 39 municipalities and evaluate progress on implementation of those projects. And that includes value created on site and whether those infrastructure projects are things that you can really rely on in terms of the quality of implementation. So we are working hard to try and alleviate and obviate such bad approaches to work or construction that are being done in municipalities. I believe the Eastern Cape is better placed to implement all the funding that we will be receiving, because we trust that the system we are implementing is better placed to give us the results that we want. But there will be some here and there problems of slowness of the implementation of such projects. But we are very hard on municipalities on implementing projects as they may be required by the public in terms of quality.
Yeah, MEC, speak to us a bit more about those areas where you're finding that you're struggling. I think it's important for transparency, but also, I suppose, will help residents in these affected areas to also understand why there are delays in getting them help, if in fact that does happen.
You mean areas like, for instance, Port St. John's municipality has delayed its projects for so long, but we are well aware that they suspended the municipal manager and the technical manager resigned. So they had teething problems of implementing those projects. So those will be candidates where the minister may intervene, but in terms of Section 154 of the Constitution, we are exploring mechanisms where we can deploy an engineer to go and assist them. But if many municipalities would require engineers at the same time, it becomes difficult even for us to support all of them. But the problem also becomes municipalities that just roguely would suspend managers because of, you know, misunderstandings here and there, and a manager or municipal manager is suspended, and then work cannot be done as we want it to be done on the ground. So those are teething problems that you would confront. Others, for instance, Nelson Mandela Metro Municipality, delays in procurement to the extent of Treasury threatening to take away the funding. But since we intervene in that space, they have now appointed a contractor to start with the construction of the bridge, which is affected by disaster. I'm trying to say there are various issues that confront municipalities in terms of their ability to spend the funds in accordance with the conditions that are set out in those grants.
Yeah, fair enough. Of course, the list of challenges is quite long, but in the main, we find that sometimes municipalities just simply can't spend the money. And part of the reason might be for what you've just outlined to us now, suspensions, vacancies, etc., etc. But amongst the other interventions that have been implemented at a national level is that there's actually meant to be regular reporting. I think it's on a monthly or on a quarterly basis of the funds that have been received. From where you're sitting, MEC, is that happening?
Yes, it is happening. Remember, we are getting these reports directly. As MEC, I get those reports. I get even reports of pictures of the quality. Remember, I also have a team of engineers at CoGTA, which team is being deployed to all the projects that are being implemented. And so far, we've been able to stop those projects which were deviating from the quality instruments that we have set up. And so far, we have agreed with the NDMC that some of those projects have now been put online and they are performing accordingly, and the quality is what we're expecting. So far, I'm saying we are able to manage those challenges, and we wish going forward that such problems will not really encounter as we're moving towards the implementation of the oncoming grant by the minister.
The amount that's been punted about, you heard me say earlier, is about R504 billion, 504 million to be more specific. Given the extent of the damage from the floods that you saw last month, MEC, does this relief go far enough?
As yet, the Eastern Cape, in terms of the announcement by the minister, we're only getting 80 million disaster recovery. The R500 million is still coming in August. So that disaster recovery, we have to implement in those waterworks and in all the infrastructure that has been damaged in terms of electricity and all that. So we are only for now receiving 80 million for about 5 municipalities.
Right, and the question is, does that go far enough? Is the kind of help that you're receiving, even though it's coming in tranches, going to be enough ultimately to help the province get back to where it was before this carnage?
As you would know, it will not be enough. The challenge is we have to construct temporary units. Now, in the recovery allocation or the allocation we are receiving, I do not seem to see any allocation to our human settlements provincial department for recovery units. You know that livestock has perished, and also the plantation fields have been destroyed, and there is no allocation as yet to restore those people's fields and the livestock. So I'm saying we will be awaiting the August allocation to try and look at those things. But my worry for now is the temporary units that we need as in yesterday, because the time we have for those mass care centers to still remain open has run out. We have now surpassed the 30 days. So we need to be relocating those communities to temporary units. So we need that funding as in yesterday.
Yeah. This is all happening within a context of real concerns, at least in the public, about whether or not, monies that are sent out are in fact spent for their intended purposes. We've heard, in instances, criminals infiltrating the system, the government tender system, co-opting the work that's meant to be done by legitimate suppliers, and ultimately stealing this money for their own interests. How big of a concern is that for you, MEC? And I'm asking this question in the wake of, let's face it, the incredibly worrying claims that have been made, generally speaking, about the extent to which government, the justice system, etc., have been infiltrated by criminal syndicates.
Ayanda, we can mitigate risks as much as we can. but there are those who are busy to explore mechanisms to deviate from the systems that we're establishing. At our level as the provincial government, we've been clear that procurement mechanisms, especially done at provincial level, there's a system where even if the department on its own has run its own procurement process to a finish, they have to submit such procurement process to provincial treasury to ensure that that process is scrutinized, to ensure procurement has been done to the T in terms of compliance. So that's what we are implementing at the provincial government level. At municipal level, I have indicated that the risk-adjusted strategy, we are monitoring all contractors that have been advertised, whether they have been awarded properly or they have been awarded in terms of compliance to the law. So we try our best to ensure that things that happen on the ground are happening in line with legislation. But there will be opportunities for those whose job is only to monitor gaps in the system and ensure that they exploit those gaps. But it won't be something that happens en masse without us monitoring. If it happens, it will happen not because of lack of monitoring, but because they are improving on actually betraying the system. But we are there, we have given instruction and marching orders that we want funds to be spent for what they have been given us to implement on.
And we certainly all hope that happens, MEC, especially when you consider what's at stake for the scores of families who've been affected by what's taken place. MEC Zolile Williams, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Appreciate the time. MEC Williams is the Cooperative Governance MEC in the Eastern Cape.